Oh, Facebook. Just gonna share this before I get started. Well, my lovely assistant is. Okay, so we're in day 2 of our 15 days of peace and purpose. So yesterday we gave an overview of regulation. We talked about the kind of different parameters of regulation. We talked about upregulation and downregulation, and then coherent versus incoherent regulation. So today I want to talk about downregulation and get into some of the specifics of downregulation. So by downregulation, of course, we mean kind of slowing things down, right? So it's our nervous system going into a slower state. So an incoherent version of that, or we could say like a more fragmented version. So by incoherent, it means that there's some way in which we're not in wholeness with ourselves, in coherence with ourselves. So an incoherent version of that is when we might go into freeze. Might be when we're feeling a sense of hopelessness or depression. Quite often there's disassociation connected to that kind of incoherent type of downregulation. So it's like life can feel all too much. It's too hard to feel those feelings. So I'm gonna pop myself out of my body and not feel those feelings because they're too confronting. It's just all too much. And in that way, I'm creating this fragmentation inside of myself. I'm like kind of denying something that's just going on, and it's just like just going to kind of be in the hopelessness of it all, right? The more coherent versions of downregulation are when we're feeling super relaxed and we're able to kind of really kind of be slow with ourselves. And this is where we're going to feel a lot more a sense of peacefulness and self-connection. Now, this is a really super important part of our experience of being human, our experience of being able to feel ourselves and connect with what's important to us. And it's a real, I think, syndrome of our culture that we're in a lot of chronic upregulation all the time. The pace of life is just like so fast all the time that it can be really hard to actually get to this place of like properly being able to feel ourselves, to slow down enough. So downregulation is like really, really super essential to properly connect with what's important to us, connect with our values, and it's also really important to actually be able to take perspective. It's in our downregulated kind of states that we can be in vaster perspective taking. And having worked in the corporate world for many, many years, this was, I think, a really big missing piece in the corporate world. There tends to be such an orientation towards like efficiency and productivity and get things done really, really quickly. And there's totally a place for that. But if we're always in that mode, we lose sight of, hang on, like what's really going on here and what's like important for us to think about. It's that kind of, that time to strategize, to figure out what's actually going to be the kind of the high leverage thing to do, the action to take that's going to really make a difference. What's the difference that's actually going to make a difference? And that all of that type of perspective taking and thinking requires us to slow down and kind of sit in stillness. Super, super important. Is there anything else I want to say about the more general things of downregulation? So downregulation is kind of like when we're being in that chronic upregulation, it's like knowing how to put on the brakes. And having been in a lot of that chronic upregulation at different periods of my time, putting on the brakes can actually feel kind of like it's wrong somehow. It's like I'm doing. To slow down might start feeling like, hang on, is there something I should be doing? Is there something I'm missing? I don't have time to kind of slow down, and that's where we can kind of get stuck in the kind of the looping of like this chronic upregulation, because it starts to almost feel like it's wrong for us to downregulate. And that's, I think, a really kind of dangerous syndrome that our culture's in. So for me, learning to put the brakes on, to down-regulate, has been really vitally important. And after big days of lots going on, to actually realize that if I slow down and come back to myself, it's going to make a real big difference for my own mental health. And before I realized that that was important, I would kind of have a big day and I'd get home and I'd still be like super kind of fast, and I'd start kind of spinning out of control. So the practice of down regulating has been like a really super important one for me, to be aware of the need of it and to know how to actually do it. So let's get a little bit more into, well, how do you down regulate? So the first thing that I am a massive fan of is just lots of big sighing. This is like such a great practice of down regulation. Anything that has us having a long out breath is going to help us down regulate. So the out breath is connected to our parasympathetic response, to that slowing down of the nervous system. So lots of sighing makes a big difference. And sighing, that includes sound, because sound also helps connect us with kind of our vagal nerve, which goes all the way down into our gut. So sighing and making sound helps kind of soothe us, soothe our nervous system. So a lot of people are quite shy to make sound when they sigh, so you might like to just start when you're not around other people, or be mindful of that, which makes sense. But sighing, which makes sound. So if you did this for like just 10 minutes, you would start feeling very, very different. So that's the first thing. The second thing that makes a big difference to down regulate is just feeling your weight, like relaxing down. So I'm just doing it now, and as I relax myself down, feel my sit bones on my chair more strongly. It helps me actually come into my body more. It helps me start to be at a slower pace. My body actually experiences at a slower pace in my mind. So relaxing down, dropping my weight, dropping my shoulders, makes a big difference to down regulate. And more generally, just relaxation. You know, there's kind of structured techniques of relaxation that you can follow. You can do techniques where you like tighten particular muscle groups and release those muscle groups, and all of those kind of things really help kind of you tune into your body, be able to kind of release tension and relax yourself. Check my notes if there's other strategies I want to speak to. And then of course, just breathing. So slowing our breathing down, it helps us really down regulate. And a simple way to kind of help us slow our breathing down is you can just kind of pace your breathing with your hand. And follow the breath with the hand, and then gradually slow your hand down to kind of slow your breathing down. How do you kind of softening more into yourself? So one of the things that's good to be mindful of as part of down regulating is that it will have us kind of come back into our bodies more. And if there's a lot of intensity that we've been in our bodies, we've been in a lot of fast movement that might have had us in kind of a lot of sensation, and quite often then a lot of emotion that we're not so connected to. Down regulating can have us actually start to feel that emotion again. So there can be this period when we down regulate, when we start to feel ourselves, and it can feel a bit hard because we're like, there's feelings that we haven't been connected to, and we need to feel those feelings and have them move through us for us to actually be able to just properly come into a more kind of peaceful, consistent, coherent type of regulation. Let me see, what else do I want to say? So, the really kind of extreme, we could say, forms of down regulation are actually forms of meditation, right? So, when we go into a state of sleep or close to being asleep, we're starting to slow ourselves down a lot, right? So at that point, the brain really starts to slow down. As we go into sleep, we go from kind of alpha to then theta to delta brain rhythms. That probably means a lot to a lot of you, but it's essentially the brain gradually slowing down. And practices of meditation are essentially when we let ourselves be in alertness and practice being alert while we're going into these really slow states. So the extreme forms of downregulation have us starting to experience more kind of mystical, psychic types of states. And that's when we can actually start to step into different forms of knowing and experiencing reality. There's a whole vast territory to explore there. But it's essentially in those places we can start to know a lot more intuitively, and we can start to experience life actually with a very different sense of blissfulness. Sleeping is generally blissful, and we can bring that quality of kind of awareness into our lives more. We're going to start to experience life with a lot more of that vast sense of potent peace. I think the last thing that I want to speak to around downregulation is that downregulation, in a sense, is it's grounding. If we're downregulating in a kind of a coherent kind of way, where we're not leaving our bodies, will have us kind of come into our bodies more and kind of just be able to actually be here a lot more. And this, I think, is a really important aspect of having a good kind of flexible nervous system. So it's my ability to actually be in that grounded kind of place that then actually lets me be able to upregulate effectively. I'm going to get into that more tomorrow when we talk about upregulation. That's being able to kind of properly connect to these slower, more base frequencies of our nervous system that is connected to downregulation, that lets us have kind of stillness in the midst of a lot of kind of the noise and the speediness of our environment. And if you just think about kind of what grounding actually is, right? Grounding is when we're connected to the earth, and like an electrical circuit, ground, like your house, there's a big spike somewhere that will actually drain a lot of the noise and the electricity of your house. Grounding for us does the same kind of thing. It lets us take all of the noise that kind of has us quite feeling overwhelmed and a bit out of control, and kind of lets us take all that excess energy and put it into the earth. And I think there's kind of, in a way, a chronic ungroundedness in our culture as well, given all of the kind of frenetic upregulation that's going on. So learning how to bring those slower, downregulated frequencies into all of our regulation is a really important part of our regulation journey. I believe that's everything that I wanted to say. Let me quickly check my notes. That is cool. Thanks for watching. Please comment and engage with us. I'd love to hear your questions and how this impacts you, and have you part of the journey that we're on in these 15 days. Thanks for watching. Bye.